Okay, welcome to July. Look, we got to talk about this because I know this to be a fact, and that is that a lot of people think that relationship problems are mostly about the other person. They think it's about the other person's tone, the other person's behavior. It's their inconsistency, it's their expectations, it's their immaturity, right? Maybe it's their defensiveness, lack of communication, and sometimes their inability to meet your needs the way you wish that they could, right? And listen, I get this, right? Sometimes all of that is part of the story. And I'm certainly, right? Like I'm certainly not here pretending that difficult people don't exist in your life, right? Because they do. Immature communication also exists. There's entitlement that exists. There's emotional dumping that exists, and manipulation exists, and avoidance that's existing. Poor boundaries exist. And honestly, right, like all of that is really real. But a lot of people I see, right, staying stuck because they spend almost all of their energy, right, staring at the other person's behavior while staying blinded to what that interaction keeps pulling out of them, right? That's the part that matters the most to me. Right? Is what is it pulling out of you? Because if a relationship is keeping your guilt activated, or continuously has you in a state of over explaining, people pleasing, right? Over functioning, there's the rescuing, softening yourself, right? That self doubt that comes in. And then, of course, there's all this urgency and the collapse, right? That's what we got to look at, because then the real work becomes not just what they're doing, it's what happens inside of you when they do. So that's what I mean when in the title, by relational authority. And I think more people, need this conversation because there's a lot of us adults walking around out there calling self-abandonment love. We're calling it maturity. We're calling it patience. We're calling it understanding. We're calling it flexibility and being the bigger person. And a lot of the time, it's none of those things, right? A lot of the time, it's what happens when someone has not really learned how to stay connected without handing themselves away, right? Like just giving all of their power away. And that's really the trap. And it's a sneaky one, right? Because it often looks really nice on the outside, right? It looks like, oh, look, right? Being the one who understands. I'm the accommodating one, right? I'm the one who asks all the questions, the one keeping the peace and doing all of the emotional labor. Oh, I hear that one so much, right? I'm the one who's taken the time to explain things more clearly. I'm the one who's the better listener. I'm the one that's repairing things first. I make sure to stay soft and calm, right? The one who's carrying that whole tone of the interaction so that nobody else has to, right? So, of course, that can look real mature, but it can also cost you so much of yourself. So this is why I keep coming back to the same question in relational work, right? What here is mine and what here is not, right? Like how much of this belongs to me or is for me or about me, and how much is for or about or belongs to someone else. right? Because every relational moment has layers, right? There's so the things that are mine, or those things that are yours, right? It's my interpretation, my tone, my pacing, my boundaries, my yes, my no, clarity, right? My response and my choices. And then what I get to look at as theirs is, well, gosh, it's their mood. It's their disappointment. It's their set of expectations. It's how they chose to react, right? It's their discomfort, their accountability, their willingness to hear me or not hear me, their emotional maturity, their opinion of me, right? And then, of course, we can't pass this one up, right? Like the dynamic. It's the dance. It's what role I choose to step into, what role they step into, and the things that keep happening between us, right? Because it happened so many times that now it's become automatic. And a lot of people don't know how to separate those three things. Right? So somebody is upset and they carry it. Somebody is disappointed and they might, I don't know, right? Like when I see disappointment, right? I see people make it mean like that they failed, right? So if somebody is unclear and then, you know, they rush to explain harder, somebody withdraws and they start scanning the room, adjusting, fixing, managing, right? Trying to restore comfort before they have even figured out what actually belongs to them. So this is how people disappear in their relationships. And it's usually not all at once, right? It happens in little itty bitty pieces. And so, you know, we can take a look back, right? And we start seeing, oh, wow, it was a little more explanation than they meant to give. Maybe there's a little more responsibility than was actually theirs, right? They did a little more softening than the clarity actually called for. There's a little more listening than their own center could afford, and a little more guilt than that moment actually deserved, and a little more emotional labor for two, right? That's how it happens, right? Little by little by little. And if you don't know your own pattern, right, you're going to keep doing it. And then keep telling yourself that same old story, right? The story that you just care deeply, right? Like, I just care so deeply. Or you're just a rational person, right? Like I'm just rational. Or you're just trying to do the right thing all the time. And maybe that's true. Or maybe, right, you're still organizing yourself around other people's emotional responses and calling that a connection. And this is why, well, we'll use the word here, right? And if you know me, right, you know boundaries isn't the standard, but we'll use regular people, regular everyday language, right? This is why our boundaries matter. But I want you to be thinking about it differently, right? Because we don't want our boundaries to be in that shallow way that gets usually, you know, talked about or discussed about boundary, right? A boundary is not about controlling other people. It's not about controlling them, right? It's about leading yourself. And that's the whole shift. So boundaries not how do I get that person, right? Like, how do I get you to stop? A boundaries, here's what I'm available for. Here's what I'm not available for. Here's what works for me. And here's what doesn't work for me. Here's what I'm going to stop abandoning myself, right? Here's where I'm going to stop abandoning myself to keep the interaction comfortable, right? And so many people struggle with boundaries, and the reason's not because they're not smart enough to know what they need, right? It's because the second that they try to hold that line, right? Because everybody thinks boundaries, right? Like that hard fast stop, which is, a limit, right? That they're trying to hold that line, right? And something rises in them. And what they don't realize, right, is that guilt, the panic, the over-explaining, the urge to soften themselves, the urge to make sure that that other person understands and approves before the boundary gets to stand or hold, right? That's why I say, right, like people don't have boundary issues. They have guilt problems. They have self-trust problems. They have a conditioning problem, right? They have nervous system problems. They have I still need your reaction to tell me whether my clarity was valid problem, right? Like I need your validation. It's so much deeper. Because if you still need the other person to be okay before you can stand in what is true for you, you're not really holding a boundary yet. You are still negotiating with your self-abandonment. And then, of course, there's communication, right? A lot of people so exhausted, right? They're so exhausted in communication. And it's not because they're bad communicators. It's because they're overworking at it, right? They're doing too much. They're caring too much. They're asking all the questions, explaining all the context. They're managing all the tone. They're trying to make it easier for the other person to hear them, trying to prevent the discomfort, trying to keep the whole interaction from getting messy. And that's not communication. That's management. And management in a relationship is not the same thing. And it's a big deal. Because some people are just not entering conversations to understand. They're entering conversations to stabilize, to prevent disappointment, to reduce tension, to keep things smooth, to manage the emotional weather, right? Like, to do the work of two people so that the interaction doesn't fall apart. And because over functioning often looks so polished, right? People are missing the cost, right? It looks like maturity. It looks like emotional intelligence. It looks like being the better communicator. And sometimes it is just over responsibility with a really, really, really good vocabulary. So real relational skills, my friends, sounds cleaner than that. We have to listen without disappearing. We have to be speaking without flooding, right? Like without flooding the whole space with words. We need to be able to hold our boundaries, limits, limitations in my world, right? Without all the over-explaining. Get to stay clear without hardening, right? Like without getting hard and rigid. Then let the other person have their own reactions without making it your full-time job to manage it. That's different. So that's why I keep saying, right, that the real work here is not about becoming colder, right? It's because a lot of times people are like, okay, I'm just going to say what's for me, and I'm not going to let in anything that somebody else is, and it just starts to develop this like coldness, in their communication inside of their relationships, and that's not what we're looking for, right? Like, we just want it to become clearer. You don't need to care less. You don't need to stop carrying what's yours. You need to stop carrying what's not yours, right? You don't, I don't need you to become harsh, right? Just need for you to stop softening your truth so much so that it disappears. You're not looking to control people better. You're not looking to stop disappearing with them. What you want to do is, I think I might need to explain that differently, right? Like, I want you to be with them without disappearing. I guess that's better, right? And by all means, you don't necessarily need to have more polishing of your communication, but more internal leadership inside the communication, right? Like, that's where the authority is begin to more. So, excuse the little pause there or break in recording. I want to say one more thing here because, it really matters. And that's that, a lot of people, right, keep trying to build stronger relationships, which is great, but they're trying to build these stronger relationships while they're still in a state of abandoning themselves inside interactions and engagements. So that's why so much relationship work is just not holding, right? Like, it's not sticking. And it's because it's being attempted from inside of a state of, I'm going to call it self-loss. So, right. So of course it's not going to hold. We have to live for ourselves first without feeling guilty, selfish, punished, restricted, etc. So if the whole interaction is still being led by guilt, approval hungry, right? Urgency, fear, fear of conflict, fear of disappointment, fear of being misunderstood, that fear of, oh my gosh, what if what if they don't like it, or being thought poorly about, and if that's where it's coming from, then no amount of beautiful language is going to fix that. So that the internal root is still owning you if that's where you are. So that's what I teach when I'm helping somebody learn how to utilize or identify or do the work inside of their own locus of control, right? It's what is mine to be led, or what is mine to carry, what role do I keep stepping into, what do I make this mean in here, right? Like, what reaction from other people is still pulling me out of myself? Where do I still carry something that I'm calling love when it's actually me abandoning myself? Right? These are real questions, and they take people somewhere that's real, or they can if they're willing to to be on the journey, right? So if you want the core of this whole month, it's this, right? Here it is. The goal is not to become harder in your relationships. The goal is not to become less available in your relationships. The goal is not to be above needing people. The goal is not to become detached and call it personal power, right? The goal is to stay yours, right? To stay connected with who you are, how you want to see yourself experiencing living, and how you want to experience your environments and how you want to be received in those environments, right? Like stay connected to yourself without disappearing, right? The goal is to stay clear without all of your over explaining. Yeah. To stay present without over functioning, to stay in your personal leadership without trying to control the whole room, right? Like all of your environments, right? This is the move. And so if you've been losing yourself in your relationships for a long time, I want you to hear this real clear, okay? You don't have to wait for everybody else to behave better before you become more internally led, right? I hear it all the time. If they would only, I could, right? So this work starts with you, with what you choose to carry, with what you explain, with what you choose to soften, right? What you choose to tolerate, what you choose to take personally, what you call love, what you keep handing away. That's where all the power is. Not in controlling others, they're outside of you, in leading you. So if this month does its job, right? So if this month does its job, then you're not going to walk away with just more insight. You're going to walk away with a cleaner question, right? What am I done calling connection that keeps costing me myself? Okay? That's where the next level begins. So if this resonates, right? Like this is the public teaching layer that kicks off the month, right? Inside the Insight and Impact Focus Group, we will take this deeper and actually build this together. Or you can just follow the playlist. And I look forward to spending some time with you.